that gets us to our secondary podcast team. JP especially, his secondary team. And we're going to the Big 12 for our final college football preview. As TCU and the Horned Frogs, a team I was very high on in the preseason if you've been following the show, goes to BYU as BYU is looking to bounce back from a letdown in Lubbock last weekend. And BYU is a 4.5-point favorite in this matchup. Should be a good game. Should be a very exciting game. It's a late kickoff, 9:15 p.m. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts on this game, JP?
I can't wait to see it in Provo. The late kickoff. Have lost just one home game in the last 2 seasons. The shocker last year when they were 9-0 and they lost to a Kansas team. The spread was very similar. I think it was 4.5 points versus, well, this one's 4.5 as well. It was right there. It was a very close spread. Kansas was a losing team at the time, so it was even more shocking. But that is why Vegas knows what they're doing. They know their power rankings. TCU of 4.5-point dogs. And TCU this year, the story and their losses have been, again, to beat the dead horse, it's been turnovers. Josh Hoover, specifically, as a quarterback, who has been really, really dynamic through the air. Everyone, of course, remembers him tearing apart Bill Belichick in his first game as the North Carolina head coach on Monday night to start the year. But in TCU's 3 losses this year, one thing has been true, and this is a constant. Josh Hoover has turned the ball over through the air with 2 or more interceptions in every time TCU has lost. That's 3 losses. 2 last week against Iowa State and a 3-point loss at home. 2 against Kansas State and a 13-point loss on the road. And 2 against Arizona State and a 3-point loss on the road. Take away the picks. Those are all 1-possession and 2-possession games. Maybe that flips towards TCU, and maybe TCU is right up here with Texas Tech and BYU in the college football playoff rankings. But that's been the story. It's been Josh Hoover turning the ball over. And BYU will turn you over. They have a +7 turnover margin this year. In their big ones, in their 3 big games so far, they were +2 in the turnover margin against Utah. They were +4 in the turnover margin against Iowa State. And then last week against Texas Tech, they were -3. So I think, again, turnovers is such a huge part of this game. I really want to see how that goes. If you tell me that right now, I feel like I have a good look on how the game would go. For BYU, I want to see just competitive resolve. They were shut down offensively last week against Texas Tech. No other way to put that. Their defense fought a ton, forced 5 field goals in that game. They showed a ton of competitive resolve defensively. I thought personally, Jack doesn't agree, that they showed that they can compete with Texas Tech if they were to play again. They have to beat TCU if they want that opportunity, because Cincinnati is right there on their heels. Will play Cincinnati, and they could beat Cincinnati and still win that tiebreaker. But then you get in a 2-loss tiebreaker with other 2-loss Big 12 teams.
It's simpler to just go win this game.
Absolutely. They have to win this game at home, in Provo, at night. They have no option but to win this game. Although, with the way they were shut down offensively last week, BYU loves to run the football. They run it for 200 a game. TCU is the 35th best rush defense in the country. It is not top 3 like Texas Tech was. They gave up 120 yards to Texas Tech's, I think it's 84, give or take. So it's going to be another test for L.J. Martin and Bear Bachmeier and this BYU Cougar offensive line. And then on the opposite side, TCU can throw the ball through the air like Texas Tech did last week as well. Josh Hoover is throwing for 303 yards a game. That's 9th in the country. I really want to see how that goes.
Yeah, completely agree.
My last one before I get into picking it, but we can go to your keys, Jack.
Sure.
Penalties issue for TCU. State fans watching this, TCU is essentially Mississippi State when it comes to penalties. They are 107th in penalty yardage per game, 62.8. The Dogs have 63.2 penalty yards per game. So it's essentially the same kind of dynamic from a penalty perspective for TCU and Mississippi State. And it will play out like that. They have to avoid penalties on the road in Provo to continue moving the football down the field and scoring points. Jack, you got keys?
Yeah, you already touched on multiple of them. The picks are huge for Josh Hoover, and they largely come when he's under pressure. He's not the most mobile guy. So if you can make him feel the heat, get him off his spot, you're in good shape. Something BYU has struggled to do a little bit this season is get pressure. So look for them to blitz, try and find ways to generate pressure. Because if you let him sit back there clean, Jordan Dwyer, Eric McAllister, Manjack, they have so many weapons, and he's gonna find them with ease. He'll pick you apart. That's when he'll hit the 300-plus passing yard mark, and it'll be a long day. So you got to find a way to get some pressure. And then for BYU, you got to be able to run the ball. You talked about how TCU's run defense has been pretty good, and it has. Interestingly enough, they're like a very consistent run defense. They kind of just give up a little over 100 rush yards to everybody. So if you're BYU, you don't really have to worry about them like shutting you down in the run game like Texas Tech did. You can still find some success. You're just probably not going to end up in a game where you run for 200-plus on them. That's what they won't let you do. But just find some moderate run game success. Put Bear in a bit of easier spots than he was in that Texas Tech game, which should be. The TCU defense is not the Texas Tech defense. Yeah. I don't think you have to worry about that. But, yeah, just find a way to find some run game success. Get after Hoover a little bit. Turn him over a couple times. That's kind of the keys. I agree.
This will be a very fun game. It's the nightcap in Provo, but a very fun game to watch of dynamic receivers. Jack has already highlighted on Bo for TCU and Eric McAllister and Jordan Dwyer. Dwyer, if you remember, he's the one with the long hair that cooked North Carolina to start the year. Was unstoppable in that game. But Eric McAllister had a game against SMU, who again beat Miami. This is a good SMU team, where he had 254 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. And he's had 100-plus receiving games on top of that. So they have 2 dynamic receivers, just like we do, BYU. We have Chase Roberts and we have Parker Kingston. I think that's kind of the game within the game. What receivers have the biggest effect on this game? Of course, LJ Martin, if he's the X factor, if he goes off and has 100-plus rushing yards, we should win this comfortably. But if it's not like that, like if it's like last week against Texas Tech, where we're slowed down in the run game and LJ Martin can't get going and Bear Bachmeier is forced to throw the ball, does Chase Roberts and Parker Kingston outplay Eric McAllister and Jordan Dwyer? I want to see. Or does Josh Hoover hand us the game by throwing a pick or two? I think that's the game within the game. Which pair of dynamic receivers wins the battle? And to go into picking it, BYU is a 4.5-point favorite. I'm going to pick BYU.
Sure.
No surprise there. I think they will win that. I'm really high, of course, on Chase Roberts and Parker Kingston. But Provo, night game, of course, the last night game they lost was to Kansas last year. We need to avoid the 2-game slide. Last year it happened with the Kansas game, and then they lost at Arizona State the week after. It's kind of flipped on its head this year, where It could be the loss to Texas Tech, the one that kind of maybe is expected, and then the loss kind of in a shocker to TCU. I think Kalani Sitake will have his guys ready. I think they'll win this game. But if we get into the second half, I've never been out there to Provo. I hope to go there and see a game one day, because the stadium is amazing with the mountain in the background.
Picturesque.
It is beautiful. How thin will that air be if we're in the second half and TCU is kind of right there and Josh Hoover is driving up and down the field? That is where it could get really interesting. Does BYU tighten up, and do they make a mistake in the fourth quarter? I don't think they will. I think they've shown competitive resolve all season long. They've responded when they needed to, and I think they will win and cover this Saturday in Provo.
Yeah, I agree. At Kalani Sitake team, I'm not really too worried about competitive resolve. I'm going to be honest. He drives a pretty steady, ship there. There's not crazy up and downs. Even this season, we thought it'd be a bit of a down year, and he says, "Nah, we good." That being said, I do like this TCU team a good bit. I know they have 3 losses, but I think they have a higher ceiling due to their passing attack. So I am going to take them to cover the 4.5. I think BYU can eke out a win. Could go either way, but I'm going to take them to cover the 4.5. half because I think they definitely can, and they will, but also because time's dwindling, and I'm in the back of the pack, and if I don't pick TCU here, we have the exact same picks, and so I can't make up any ground.
Yes.
So give me TCU to cover here.
Sanders has BYU winning and covering as well. Sanders can tie me for the lead in the college football pick'em if one game flips, and that is the Alabama-OU game. Jack can also gain ground with this TCU-BYU game, and that is it for our college football predictions.
Yeah.
5 great games, and we're not even talking about game day, Notre Dame Pitt.
There's other good games for sure. This is a pretty good weekend, but the heavy hitters, I mean, just getting Alabama, Oklahoma, and Texas, Georgia same week is huge.
It was very similar to what it was last year. We had Georgia, Texas at night, and we had Alabama went into Neyland and played at Tennessee.
Yeah.
They have delivered on these big SEC matchups every single weekend. That is what just is amazing about this conference.
Kind of what Kalen DeBoer does too in a vacuum is it's a good. He's gonna give you a show. I'll tell you that.
Absolutely.
In a big game. I agree, Tucker. I would love to see a 2 group of 5 playoff, largely because I think that's unfortunately about the only way JMU gets in at this point, and they deserve to get in my opinion. So if that's how it has to happen,
it may not feed for the common fan great matchups in that first round, but I don't care.
You're probably not going to get fantastic first-round matchups anyway, so I don't really see why
we didn't last year.
Yeah, I don't see why it matters too much. It is what it is.